Rami never said much at school. It wasn't shyness, it was survival. In crowded hallways where laughter sounded like warnings and teachers barely remembered his name, silence became armor. Most days, he drifted through like mist in room 17, unnoticed, unbothered, and entirely alone. He lived with his grandmother in a rusting apartment above a laundromat. Nights were filled with buzzing machines, flickering lights, and the scent of bleach. While she worked 2 shifts, folding other people's clothes, Rami stayed close to the window, drawing on a cracked tablet salvaged from a school donation box. The screen glitched, the stylus skipped, but when he painted, the world obeyed him. Each night, he painted without limits. Swirling galaxies, melting cities, beasts with wings like fire, images no classroom could contain. He shared nothing, saved everything, and deleted nothing. These weren't just drawings, they were escape routes. At school, Rami's clothes were always one size off. His shoes had duct tape on the toes. His backpack carried more dust than books. Other kids pointed. Some laughed. Most ignored. Teachers glanced past him, except for Ms. Rivera. She noticed how his notebooks overflowed with strange, brilliant sketches. Instead of asking him to stop, she gave him blank paper. Once, she left a note on his desk. "Your silence speaks. Let your art shout." No one expected him to be chosen for the eminent arts exchange. The city's elite school wasn't meant for kids like him. Its halls were filled with talent, polished by private lessons and praise. Still, when the roster was posted, his name sat quietly at the bottom. Ms. Rivera smiled, said nothing, and handed him the permission slip. On the day of the trip, his grandmother ironed the only clean shirt he had. It was missing a button, but she pressed it like it belonged to royalty. "Just look and learn," she whispered, tucking a paper napkin into his lunch. "You don't have to prove anything." The bus ride to Eminent felt like traveling to another planet. Brick buildings gave way to steel and glass towers. The school gates opened into a courtyard lined with fountains and sculptures that looked like they belonged in museums. Students there wore uniforms that shimmered under the sun, their laughter sharp and effortless. Rami walked behind his classmates, head down, fingers gripping the straps of his worn bag. The inside of the building glowed. Marble floors stretched beneath vaulted ceilings. Holographic screens displayed student art that moved and changed with time of day. One piece blinked his name as he passed, reading visitors' badges through a scanner embedded in the wall. Everything was loud without sound. He felt smaller with each step. They were taken to different workshops. Rami ended up in Digital Studio 3. The room pulsed with light. Walls doubled as screens. Canvases responded to touch. Every student had a top-tier tablet, brush pens, and noise-canceling headphones. Rami had his chipped device zipped inside a side pocket. As he took a seat at the edge of the room, a boy with perfect hair and a silver stylus glanced at him. Then he whispered something to his friend. Laughter followed. Rami didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. He didn't expect to be welcomed. He just wanted to see the colors. When the instructor asked students to create a scene based on the word freedom, Rami's screen remained black. He didn't draw. He watched. Every other canvas exploded with wings, open skies, and bright, neon letters. Rami waited. Then, with a slow breath, he reached for his old stylus, tapped the corner of his screen, and began. He didn't know yet, but that moment would change everything. The first stroke on Rami's screen was small, almost invisible. No one noticed. Around him, other students were already showcasing their flashy designs, layering animations, spraying bright colors across giant touch walls. Their laughter echoed as they showed off their tricks, filling the studio with noise. Rami kept his head down, his fingers working quietly. His world grew from a single cracked screen. Thin lines merged into twisting branches, deep blues bled into darker shadows, and a pale light fought through stormy clouds. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even fast. But it was alive. He didn't need noise to create. He needed silence. A group gathered near the center table, where the boy with the silver stylus, Blake, was showing off a massive golden eagle. It flapped across his display, dramatic and perfect. Blake's friends clapped and cheered as if he had won a prize. When Blake caught sight of Rami sketching alone, he smirked. "Hey, someone lend him a real tablet," he called out. "Before, he draws stick figures on a potato." His voice cut through the room, sharper than the stylus in his hand. A few students chuckled. Some glanced at Rami with half-curious, half-pitying eyes. Rami felt the heat rise on his neck but said nothing. Instead, he finished the last line of a crooked tree branch, breathed through the sting behind his eyes, and turned off his screen. The instructor, a tall woman with wire-rimmed glasses, clapped her hands for attention. "We'll take a break," she said. "But if anyone wants to try the main wall, it's open." She pointed toward the massive digital canvas mounted across the front of the studio. Bright, untouched, glowing faintly. Rami stared at it for a second, then dropped his gaze. Most students ran for snacks or scrolled through their phones. A few hung around, daring each other to make a move. No one dared. Blake laughed and tossed his stylus onto a table. "Bet he'll wreck it if he tries." Without thinking, Rami stood. The chair scraped loudly against the polished floor. Conversations paused. Heads turned. Even the instructor raised an eyebrow. Rami walked forward, each step heavier than the last. The wall loomed over him, shimmering, waiting. He could hear Blake's voice again in his mind, mocking, sneering. Dirty fingers, wrong place, wrong dreams. He touched the surface. The wall shifted under his hand, recognizing contact, inviting more. He drew a single black line. A hush fell across the room. The line expanded, splitting into rivers and roots, each twist telling a story no words could explain. His fingers moved, faster, filling the void with a battered ship sailing through furious oceans, cracked earth stitched together by veins of gold, crumbling towers whispering against twilight skies. He wasn't copying anything. He wasn't planning. He was remembering. The mistakes, the broken things, the unseen hopes, they poured out of him. Unstoppable. Students crept closer. Silent now. Even Blake froze, arms crossed tighter, face unreadable. The mural grew, layer after layer. Not perfect, not neat, but fierce, raw, beautiful in a way that didn't ask for permission. It demanded to exist. Rami's breath came short, his heart pounding, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. The wall wasn't a screen anymore. It was a door, swinging wide open. By the time he lifted his hand, the room had changed. No one spoke. Even the instructor seemed rooted to the spot, mouth slightly open. A few seconds passed. Someone dropped their tablet. The clatter broke the spell. Then, a girl near the back whispered, "Did you see that?" The instructor finally stepped forward, clearing her throat. Who taught you to draw like that?" Rami shrugged lightly, wiping his sweaty palms on his jeans. No one. The answer hung in the air, heavier than applause. Blakey stepped back, his face a tangle of disbelief and something else. Respect, maybe, or regret. He didn't say another word. For the first time that day, Rami smiled. Not wide, not loud, but enough. Enough to know he didn't have to be loud to be heard. He just had to be seen, and now he was. After Rami's hand left the wall, something unseen shifted in the studio. The noise never returned. Conversation stayed hushed, footsteps lighter, glances longer. Even the instructor seemed to move slower, as if careful not to disturb whatever had been created. She approached Rami, still holding her clipboard, but with a different kind of respect. "What's your name again?" she asked, softer this time. He answered quietly, almost unsure. She nodded like she was memorizing it, carving it into stone somewhere in her mind. By the end of the session, whispers followed him down the hallways. Students leaned into each other, muttering, not mocking, but wondering. A few tried catching glimpses of him when they thought he wouldn't notice. Even Blake didn't throw another word his way. He just stood near the lockers, tapping his foot, gaze darting away whenever Rami looked up. Before the buses arrived, a woman in a navy suit with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm stopped him near the exit. She smiled, not the kind of smile adults give because they have to, but a real one, the kind that asked nothing in return. "I'm Ms. Callahan," she said, extending her hand. "I direct the Visual Rising Stars program here at Eminent." He hesitated before shaking it, his palm still faintly sticky from nerves. "I saw what you created today," she continued. "I see a lot of talent pass through these halls, but what you did, that wasn't just skill. That was soul." Rami shifted awkwardly, unsure whether to thank her or run. "We offer scholarships," she added, pulling a crisp brochure from her portfolio. "Summer residency, mentorships, access to real equipment, no cost to your family. Just your time, your heart, and your art." He stared at the glossy paper in her hand, but didn't reach for it. It looked too clean, too far away from the cracked screens and dollar store styluses he knew. "Talk to your guardian," she said warmly, tucking the brochure into his backpack for him. "And think about it." When he boarded the bus, he sat alone by the window, forehead pressed against the glass, watching the perfect world of Eminent shrink behind him. The city blurred back into cracked sidewalks and chipped paint, but something inside him refused to shrink back with it. At home, his grandmother listened carefully, nodding once in a while, folding a pair of faded jeans with mechanical precision. When he finished, she sat quietly for a long time. Finally, she stood, reached into a drawer, and pulled out a thin, hand-stitched blanket. Old but clean, the edges frayed from years of use. "Take this," she said, placing it in his lap. "No matter how far you go, remember where you started." Rami folded it carefully, feeling its warmth soak into his fingertips. Summer arrived with heavy skies and air thick enough to stick to your skin. Rami packed his entire world into a second-hand duffel bag and boarded a city bus that smelled like hot metal and hope. Eminent's campus loomed ahead, the buildings as dazzling and intimidating as before. But this time, he wasn't just visiting. He belonged here, even if only for a little while. Workshops filled his days. Professional artists guided him through layers of technique he never knew existed. He learned about light, composition, digital layering. But more importantly, he learned. He was already enough. Every time he touched a screen, every time he created from nothing, he proved it. He missed home. He missed the buzz of old fans spinning at night, the soft shuffle of his grandmother's steps across the kitchen tiles. But every evening, when he unfolded that thin blanket at the foot of his bed, it reminded him why he stayed. Toward the end of the program, students were asked to create a final piece to present at the showcase. No rules, no restrictions, just one canvas, one chance, Rami thought for days. When the night arrived, he stood backstage, sneakers tapping nervously against the polished wood. Parents, teachers, local artists filled the auditorium. They talked, laughed, sipped coffee out of tiny cups, oblivious to the heartbeat echoing in Rami's ears. When they called his name, he walked out alone. No spotlight followed. No special introduction. Just a blank wall waiting for him. He lifted his stylus, heart pounding harder than ever, and painted. Not dragons or planets this time. Not castles crumbling or trees splitting the sky. He painted a small apartment window, cracked open to a noisy street. A worn sofa. A folded blanket stitched by hand. A boy curled on the floor, sketching galaxies onto a broken screen while laundry machines hummed through the walls. It was quiet. It was small. But it was real. He finished the last stroke, stepped back, and faced the crowd. There was no immediate applause, just a thick, aching stillness. Then one person stood. Then another. Hands came together, not because they were expected to, but because they had to. Blake sat near the middle, not laughing, not smirking, just watching, wide-eyed, as if seeing Rami for the first time. Later that night, as he packed his bag to go home, Rami realized he had never needed permission to create something beautiful. He just needed to believe that even invisible colors could paint the brightest skies. And now, he did.